I think the Irish are playing hardball at the moment, and to some degree that's completely understandable because, of course, they've got a lot to lose from a bad Brexit, and they've got a lot to lose if Northern Ireland and the Republic end up being very cut off. But I'm slightly confused by their position. They're essentially saying, we need the Brexiteers to explain the solutions here, and we need answers on the future between the Northern Irish province and the Republic. But that's not possible until we know what the trade and customs relationship will look like, and we're not allowed to start talking about those because the EU has said we haven't yet made sufficient progress to talk trade.
Now, I know that you argue, and many argue, that the phrase sufficient progress is inherently political.
Yes.
But I'm interested in why you think the British government signed up to the way these talks were phased, if they're then going to make that argument.
Well, that's a reasonable question. It probably was a mistake by the British government to agree to this phased talks. And as you said, sufficient progress is a political test, not a technical test. And indeed, that phrase, sufficient progress, was chosen in the guidelines of the Commission by EU member states precisely because it allowed flexibility. And what we're seeing now is that the UK has broadly reached sufficient progress on the question of the citizens. It's got there pretty much on the question of the money, and Ireland is emerging as the key sticking point. And as you said again, the Irish government is saying they want no regulatory divergence in the future between the Republic and the province. And I think that's a very difficult demand to make. Now, of course, Northern Ireland is an area of legitimate interest for the Republic, but I don't think it goes so far as they can say that they have a right to veto any future change in regulation in the broader UK.
We were in Ireland all of last week reporting, including up on the border area where you're looking at dairy companies. For instance, we spent some time with dairy farmer, dairy industry. That regulatory divergence is something they're very concerned about. But I wonder, are you surprised? You know, we saw Donald Tusk in Dublin on Friday saying how shoulder to shoulder they're going to standing with the Irish government. Are you surprised how unified the EU has been behind the Irish position over the last few weeks?
No, I think we've seen a lot of EU unity overall from the 27 right from the very beginning. I think that might get harder later in the talks, but at the moment, no. But I think they should be listening to Bertie Ahern, the former Irish Taoiseach from the Blair years. And he said, look, we need a combination here of technical solutions on the border, which is what the UK government's proposing, and the EU to agree to turn a blind eye and to accept that, for example, some dairy cows may be crossing over the border, and that will be sort of essentially something that the EU needs to ignore. Now, the UK has also said that in the terms of agriculture and energy, they're broadly happy to look at a aligned regulatory future. But I don't think that means for financial services or other areas of regulation that we need to be permanently aligned. There's some areas of regulation which more precisely affect the border than others.
What's the implication for Theresa May if over the next 10 days or so there's no such thing as sufficient progress being made? Is that something that's very damaging for her and her party, do you think?
That's a crucial question. I think it's quite hard to tell what would happen if there was no sufficient progress. I think it would be, at one level, it could be a massive setback for her. Another level, it might actually mean that the pressure becomes overwhelming for the UK to walk away from the talks and to pursue a different, a non-negotiated exit from the EU. So
something that business has repeatedly said they don't want.
Businesses, and also, of course, although it's probably true that the UK would be damaged more by such an exit, it's certainly the case that Ireland would be damaged more than any other EU 27 country. So I think that's something that the Irish should avoid at all costs as well.